It's gonna be a cool project for you guys. Obviously, wanted to come out and film this. One reason is we're doing a different pattern than we typically would do. And we're also finishing this off with just 2 texture coats of our concrete overlay. So we're not doing a wood grain in or anything. So it'll be a smoother, flatter finish. It's 12 inches, 12-inch planks, more of a tile, a larger tile pattern. And then we're splitting every plank, 64-inch planks? 72-inch planks, and then we're splitting them in the middle every time. And so it's gonna create this really cool, high-end look, longer tiles. Typically you don't see tiles that long, but it's gonna be really cool. And then we're not doing wood grain on these. We're just doing 2 coats of our texture coat, one of our flat squeegee Leggari squeegee finishes. And then we talked to her about doing a wood grain border over the exposed aggregate. A few reasons why we're doing that. So if we were to just coat over this, we're gonna have to do probably an extra coat to get this smooth to finish off like the overlay is gonna out here because it has texture from all the rocks. The other thing is we don't wanna run this design right to the edge because then, they have friends, family over, they go to walk out, they're not gonna necessarily know there's a step here, and that's happened before. So it's always good to break up something on the edge of where there's a step. So your eye's drawn to that. It tells you there's something different there, and you're more cautious when you walk down and you kind of realize there's a step there. So the plan is to just do this border edge, a wood grain texture, same color as the interior, but it'll have a different texture to it. So it could look really cool. This is what we're always mixing overlay in. They're heavy duty garbage bags, not bags, cans. They got a flat bottom, even though it's got some indentation in there. It's flat, so your drill is not gonna catch like an edge and just like rip your wrist off your hand. That does hurt. And so brute force 32 gallon, mixing that. We always like to wet these first because the plastic is porous, so we'll wet it so it'll make it easier to clean it out. And then after we mix, we'll transfer that into 5-gallon buckets from this garbage can, and we'll dump out from 5-gallon buckets. All right, so I'm about to do the second coat. We've been pre-hydrating for the last like 10 minutes, and it's just soaking in on that where the sun's directly hitting it. But like I said, this coat's gonna be a lot easier to hydrate and coat because we have an even porosity everywhere. When you're dealing with bare concrete like that first coat, you got a lot of spots that'll wanna soak up moisture more. You got the tape lines, you can't hydrate everything perfectly. Now we can. It's gonna be a lot easier to coat. The tape's all locked down, so we don't have to be careful on spots. And since we're doing this border wood grain, I'm gonna have to do the wood grain texture as Brian's, as he's coating the top. So we gotta stay in uniformity as far as coating and doing that texture as he's going around, while also keeping the hydration up on this edge, because this edge is gonna dry out a lot faster versus where it's in the shade. The moisture is gonna sit there longer. All you coating contractors, if you want to set your business apart or add a revenue generating machine to your current business, go to LeggariAcademy.com. You're gonna learn over 10 coating systems, and you're gonna be doing projects just like this. Second coat, borders are dialed, top's finished. Mark's going back, just brushing in the bottom corner. Obviously, if you sit out there in chairs or get farther out, you might see underneath there a little more. Want to make that look good. And so it's already drying out over here. Obviously, the sun's gonna dry this out quicker, but this took us a half an hour to do this coat. It took us about a half an hour to do the first coat. And then we're gonna have probably an hour, hour and a half, maybe dry time. And so obviously temperature dependent. You know, if this whole thing was in the sun, probably an hour we could start pulling tape. Shade really affects it. Cooler temps affect it. The hotter it is, the faster it's gonna dry. If we can throw fans on it, it's gonna speed it up as well. But we're gonna have some darker grain in this edge by default, just from putting the product on thicker by wood grain in it. So you can kind of see how it's already drying out a little darker in the thicker spots. So that's gonna really create a cool look on that border with that wood grain. And so once it's dry, we'll come in, we'll pull the tape, get everything cleaned, and then we'll do 3 to 4 thin coats of our WB sealer, and this is done. And all right, so here's where we're at. How long has it been? About an hour, hour and a half maybe? So it's dry enough to get out there and do stuff, but this has been in the shade. We went to start peeling it, the tape. Remember this, you know, from like out to here, it was in the sun the whole time. This all pulled money. Looks really good. When we get into where the shade was, it's starting to pull out not as crisp lines. So we don't want to rush it. We don't want to have little corners pop up and have a jaggedy edge. We like this nice crisp edge, so we're not gonna rush it. We're just gonna come back tomorrow. And we're gonna pull the tape, get the coats of sealer on it, and so forth. The biggest thing when you guys are doing these overlays, you don't want it to rain on it. Make sure the water's turned off. This guy. Keno, no. You don't want it to rain on it. You don't want sprinklers turned on. Make sure the homeowners know that. All right, so we got here a little late today, but we're gonna film everything. We'll talk about what they did before we got here. Basically pulled the tape. It's pulling a lot crisper now. Remember, we left yesterday. We decided to let it set up a little more. Pulling a lot crisper. One thing that Brian was saying is obviously when we do our hardwood system, we're doing 1 coat over the tape. We did 2 coats over the tape on this. Now granted, when you do the hardwood, you will get thick spots from the texture, which would be like 2 coats, but this whole pad has 2 coats over everything. And so they got to be a little bit more methodical when they're pulling the tape, but it's turning out beautiful. All right, so we got 3 coats on the top. We're gonna do probably 2 on the faces because we're rolling it. It's gonna go on a little thicker. Biggest thing, guys, is don't have a bunch of puddling, white spots out there. Do thin, multiple coats. So he's gonna do 1 more, so I'll have 4 total thin coats. And yeah, basically probably you pull plastic and do all that today, right? Yeah, so he'll be able to get this thing completely finished, cleaned up, done. Again, the WB sealer dries extremely quick. And so you're able to do those multiple coats and you're able to clean everything up. Simple process, man, and you guys should be offering these exterior coatings. There's so much money on the table that companies miss out on when they just focus on decorative epoxies, because there's so much more square footage, exterior driveways, patios, pool decks. You guys gotta be offering these systems. And especially when you're doing cool, unique things like this, word of mouth travels extremely quick.